All right, what's up? My name is Jordan Mitchell. I'm 21 years old. I work at a tech startup doing content design. So I edit videos, write blog posts, do graphic design stuff. I've traveled a lot in the last year. Since I dropped out, I've lived in Miami, been to Vegas, Utah, LA, New York a couple times, Denver, Mardi Gras in New Orleans, South by Southwest in Austin, Texas, Prague, Slovakia, Switzerland, Paris, and now Portugal. I think that's everything. And the reason I say that is not as a flex, but to talk about how I did it. The first introduction for me to this sort of lifestyle was when I was still in university. I read this book called The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. The old concept is you make a ton of money, retire, and then go travel and go live life and live luxuriously. But Tim Ferriss's idea was you kind of can build in these mini retirements into your actual life. And it's a lot easier today to do that than before. You can go live somewhere cheap, like Thailand, Bali, even Portugal is in Europe, but really quite cheap compared to the rest of it. And you can do all this traveling while you're still living your normal life, if you position yourself well. I still wanted to build a career, and I'm interested in building my craft and learning, and I like to work. But the idea of being able to travel and work remotely was the most important part for me. After my first year of university, I really wanted to drop out. And I talked to my parents, and they convinced me to go back for one more year. And I did, and I'm grateful that I went back. Not really for the actual school, but for the connections that I made. I'm super grateful to have made a ton of great friends that really shifted my mindset. And so that's by far the most valuable thing for university for me. The actual learning stuff in the classroom, sure, I learned a little bit, but by far the majority of my learning has come from working on independent projects and learning stuff online. Point is, I went to university and realized I was learning a lot more in my side projects. So I started a clothing company my first year, and then I started doing freelance videography and video editing work. And I was always way more engaged in that stuff than I was in actual class. Almost all of my university experience was done with me in the back of class working on other projects. My parents are paying all this money for me to go to school. It's an American university, and I'm not really learning. I'm not engaged. What's the point of me being here, basically? So I decided to take a gap year. I can always go back at some point. So I did the gap year. Continued with freelance videography, which was super fun. Built up good connections in the Miami tech scene, doing event videography and so on. Before, I was learning a lot, working on side projects outside of school, but because I didn't have the safety net of school and I didn't have to spend time doing that, I learned even more because it was real life. You have to go pay rent now and prove to yourself that you're not taking the easy way out for dropping out of school. That was my mindset. Got lucky to have some really good connections from university who kind of got me positioned well in the tech scene in Miami, doing event videography. I still worked really hard for all of those things, grinding to learn new techniques and to meet deadlines and whatever. But I built up a pretty good reputation for myself in the Miami tech scene doing videography. After what would have been my first semester off of school, I was really happy with what I was doing with the videography stuff, but I was reminded of this 4-hour work week idea and wanted to travel and wanted to find a way to be location independent, which wasn't possible for me at the time because my income was doing event videography in Miami. So obviously I had to be in Miami with my camera, and I was tied to that spot. I kind of just kept my feelers open, and then there was a position that opened up at a startup that my friend worked at for a content designer. And because I had built up this pretty good reputation for my work, and because I had a good vouching from my friend, I was able to land this job at this tech startup. where I was doing like design stuff, video editing, which are all skills that I had been building up since high school, just shooting music videos with friends and making YouTube videos like these. It's the corny thing that everybody says is, I didn't think there was going to be a career in this. I just started it because it was fun. And then it ended up becoming a career for me. A career. Like, I've been at this for a year, but you know what I mean. But my point in bringing that up is there's a good chance that you have some skill set that you've just worked up through your innate curiosity that is valuable to somebody. It's just a matter of getting better at it, getting experience working with actual clients, and meeting the right people. Anyways, that was my story. So now I have a job at a tech company. It was fully remote. Like, the team, like, our head of operations is in Spain. Our head of tech is in Peru, I think. Our CEO is in Miami. CTO is in San Diego. Like, everybody was all over the place. So I was super lucky, or not even lucky, but like, I was aiming for a job that would allow me to live that lifestyle, to live remotely and asynchronously. So this kind of fell into my lap. I jumped on it. The flow for me as a college dropout was, first, just do something that can pay your bills and give you a little bit of extra money to invest in learning skills. And then from there, I was like, okay, now I want a remote job. Oh, and I guess one other point here is the company I'm in is in the Web3 crypto space. That was also something that just caught my curiosity. I'd heard about it, and so I did a ton of reading, watching YouTube videos, and followed my curiosity again. And then that ended up being helpful for me getting my job. Here's a point I want to talk about. When I first dropped out, I think the perception of the college dropout is that you're going to be this like entrepreneur, like entrepreneurial minded. You have to start your own business. And I think I resonate with that. Obviously, I've started a couple businesses and I really enjoy that intensity and fire. But I think it's really valuable if you're not making a ton to have an actual stable job. So I was kind of faced with this inflection point around February where like this job opportunity kind of landed in my lap at this startup. But at the same time, I had the opportunity to build my video production business, doing freelance stuff. I had some really good portfolio work under my belt, including directing an ad for Budweiser, some pretty big tech events. I kind of had these two paths, one like the independent route, one the job route. The reason I chose the job route was, if you're an independent contractor, like if you're running a business like video production, you don't really have creative freedom. I'm super interested in like the art of filmmaking. So a lot of my YouTube videos, for example, are more like video essays, following my curiosity, exploring interesting topics, just stuff that I want to make just because I want to make them. And I'm interested in fashion and all these other art forms. So eventually I want to get to a point where I'm an independent entrepreneur, creator, working on my own thing. Like, my long-term goal is not to be a job worker, which, even though the video production stuff I would have been doing is pretty high margin, and I'm pretty confident I could be making more doing that than I am at my startup job, I wanted to give myself security for a year to just explore creative opportunities where like I'm making enough and I have enough free time in my job where I can make YouTube videos about whatever I want, or I can use some of the extra income to invest in learning new skills or whatever. And I committed myself to doing that for a year because I've never held a job or worked on a project consistently for that long in my life. So I wanted to commit to proving myself that I could work on something for that long and have it be comfortable enough where I can not worry about rent and have some extra income to invest in skills and my own creative projects. So that was a big decision for me in terms of going the job route. And then how do I afford it? The traveling bit. So I've traveled a lot in the last year. Since I dropped out, I've lived in Miami, been to Vegas, Utah, LA, New York a couple times, Denver, Mardi Gras in New Orleans, South by Southwest in Austin, Texas, Prague, Slovakia, Switzerland, Paris, and now Portugal. I think that's everything. And the reason I say that is not as a flex, but to talk about how I did it. And so there's 3 ways I was able to afford it. First is a lot of that travel came from jobs, like came from work. So either for this startup now or when I was doing videography stuff, I got flown to New York, I got flown to New Orleans, I got flown to South by Southwest. So that's like the first hack, is if you can find a job that requires you to travel, blessed. 2 is friends. So I'm lucky I went to a pretty international school and just like made friends all over. And I think the best way to travel is if you have a friend who's from the culture. So that's how I was able to go to Jamaica. I forgot to mention that. Jamaica, Utah, California, Slovakia, all of those, I was staying with friends. I had them to tour around me, so that was a big cost saver. And you just get to see the city more intimately. And then the third is me just paying outright. And really only recently, like only these last 2 weeks, I've been traveling like that in Paris and here in Portugal. I'm just staying in cheap Airbnbs. The thing is, for me, the big flight from North America to Europe, I was able to get my job to pay for that because we had a all-team offsite in New York. I timed my move to Europe at that time so that they'd paid for my flight to Europe. The point is, if you can like save up or find a way to finesse that big flight over to Europe, then it's really cheap. Like Slovakia is way cheaper than America. Portugal is way cheaper than living in America. Paris is pretty expensive. Prague is super cheap. Like here in Portugal, for context, my Airbnb tonight is $17 per night. And a full meal is, you can easily eat for less than $5. You go to a nice restaurant, easily less than 20. And once you're in Europe, flights are super cheap. Like I'm looking at a flight from here to Morocco, which would be $65. So like once you actually get over to a cheap continent, if you're American, then it's a lot easier. I know Southeast Asia is even cheaper than where I'm at now. So I'm considering spending some time in Thailand or Bali or whatever. But once you actually make that big flight, then it's super cheap. So if you can work independently and stay somewhere for a couple months, then that's cheap. And I think this is the biggest misconception of the digital nomad travel for a living thing, is most people don't hop around all the time. Most people stay places for a couple months. You're saving money. Like me, being here in Lisbon is saving money compared to living in Miami, where I was before. Some of the downsides. So the main downside, I think, is not a downside for me, but if you're somebody who really values security and like a stable environment around you, then this is not the lifestyle for you. It's funny, I was talking to a friend in Paris. Oh my gosh, like you're so brave for what you're doing. Like I could never move around so much. And for me, it's not brave. Like it's just, I thrive better when I'm in chaos. Like when things are too stagnant and too comfortable, I go crazy. So I prefer working on super intense projects. I prefer traveling. I prefer having my external environment be very fluid and action-packed. But if you need some security around you and you enjoy a set routine and enjoy knowing exactly how your day is going to plan out, maybe this isn't the best lifestyle for you. Although, with that being said, there are people who, like the slow mad thing, I haven't really gotten to experience yet. The living at somewhere for a couple months in like the same apartment. I haven't really done that yet. I guess I did that in Miami. I lived in Miami for a couple months. So I guess there is room for security, but 2, at least the way I've structured things, is it can be pretty lonely if you're bouncing around. I really enjoy time by myself and traveling by my own. So this isn't a downside for me. I guess like the way to counteract it is you can easily FaceTime and call friends. Obviously, it's not the same. And there's like Slack groups. Nomadlist.com is really good for connecting you and building some sense of community. I haven't really explored it that much because part of me coming here to Portugal and I think to Morocco is I wanted time just by myself. I want to grind at YouTube, build my filmmaking skills, and just like embark on that entrepreneurial grind. If you want to say it, that's kind of cringy, but there's one side of traveling, which is the wanderlust, make friends around the world, be a tourist everywhere, see all these historic places. That's one part of it, and that's super cool thing that I want to spend more time doing. But like kind of another thing that I don't hear talked about as much, which is what I'm doing, is doing this to cut costs. So I'm saving like a really good portion of my paycheck every year or every month because living over here is cheaper. And I enjoy being by myself. I want to really hone in on my craft, get better at making videos, and just like lock in and focus. Anyways, hopefully that's not too entrepreneur bro cringe. I think those are the main points I wanted to talk about. The main point of all this, open up people's mind. Obviously, I enjoy the life I live. And obviously on the internet, I'm gonna want to portray it like I love it. But yeah, you don't need to be super rich to travel the world anymore. But you do need like a base level of security, which is why I think building up skills that can be valuable on the internet is so important if that's something you care about. Like my sister, for example, wants to go into education and teaching. She also loves traveling, but thinks education is her mission. And so that's like a different lifestyle. Obviously, she needs to get an actual 9-to-5 job, working at a school and getting experience there. And she needed to finish university for that. And like I have a friend I was just talking to who's a pilot or wants to be a pilot, just got his pilot's license. Obviously that you need to go to school for. There's a lot of careers where you do need that. But like if you want to be location independent and aren't interested in that type of career, getting things that can make you money on the internet, video editing, design, UI and UX design, is super profitable. Even graphic design, coding, obviously, copywriting. Like there's probably list videos on how to make money on the internet. But like if you can really lock in and find a skill like that you can obsess over and get good at, then there's like a whole world out there, and you don't need universities to do that. All of my design and video education came from YouTube and practical experience, aside from a couple high school courses. So you don't need to be super rich to travel the world. You don't need a college degree anymore, except for some careers, obviously. Also, you don't need to be super party to travel. Like I enjoy being by myself and working and grinding and building my career. And I'm still doing the digital nomad thing. And yeah, those are the main points I wanted to cover. So hopefully this helped. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. Oh, this is the long form video. I'm gonna edit part of this, and so when I make YouTube videos, my parents call them vlogs and call me a vlogger sometimes. Today I actually filmed the vlog. Like I was actually a selfie, hand up vlogger. Point is, what is the point? I don't know. I hope this helped. Oh, and you can watch that video here.